Hey everybody, welcome back to our channel, Kono Pro. In this video, we're going to be building another hood cover. Now this hood cover cabinet, what this one's going to be is going to be mounted, and then we're going to be using a hood that's going to be an undermounted hood. So this build is for an undermounted hood. If you watch my previous video on how to build a hood cover for your hood insert, that's one of our existing videos. So if you see here, I'm just going over some of the stuff. We have the magnets, we have the angle, we have our countersink with our pilot right there. We use that. Then we use the multi-purpose tool. We use the finish hammer. We got the magnets there, and some 2.5 inch screws. 2 inch to 2.5 are good screws to keep with you. All right, let's get going. So first thing we do is we take that multi-purpose tool, and we're gonna square up and level up our crown molding. We're gonna cut that flush with the existing cabinet, okay? Because our new cabinet that we're gonna be building and mounting in between those two cabinets right there for our range hood area, that we need everything flush, and that cabinet we're gonna be building is gonna come out past that existing crown molding reveal. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm making all my measurements. I'm figuring out my two sides, because that's the most important thing that I want to build, are going to be my two sides. And then we don't need a back because the wall's there, but it's basically going to be the two sides, and then we're going to attach the bottom and then the face. That's how we're going to build this. So now I'm just cutting the two sides, and we're using a a guide with our skill saw, so it's a nice clean straight edge cut. And you can also use a table saw if you want to use that, unless you have a track with a skill saw like this is really nice. You can also use a regular skill saw without the track, and it's going to be fine too. Just use your factory edges on the front, and your cut edge you can put towards the back of the wall. So now I measured basically my pieces of oak are going to be my trim pieces, and they're going to go about 3/4 of an inch reveal past the bottom. You see how I have a piece of plywood? That's going to be what I'm going to be putting on the bottom, and then on the face for my face. So I want to make sure I have that reveal. And I don't know if you noticed, but I took the oak and I glued the other side of it, and then I put it on the face side of this cabinet here, on the side of this cabinet. I put on the face side of that plywood, and then I nailed in from the back side, so that way there's barely any nail holes on the face side of the actual cabinet, okay, on the oak trim. And you can see I have the 3/4 reveal right there, and I'm using that little piece of plywood just to make sure I got that reveal. That way when I put my plywood door, that's gonna magnetize to the front of that side right there, because that's one of the sides. Then I want to make sure that the plywood and everything is flush, so my oak trim is gonna line up with that oak trim that I put on the face. It's a little bit hard to explain, but I hope you all are following me. So you can see there, basically, now I'm going to put a piece of oak in between those two pieces there. And what I did is I went up and marked it up on the cabinet to where the edge of my cabinet is, so that way my oak piece can come out to that reveal, so you can see that trim piece. Okay, now this is important for you to, you can dry fit it and then set it back up there, shut the door on the cabinet, and make sure that everything's lining up the way you want it to line up. And that's going to work out for you. Make sure you do that. You cut your piece, you can dry fit it in there, set your side up to the cabinet, and make sure it's going to line up where you want it to line up, the reveal. You want to shut the cabinet door, open it, and then be able to see like back behind that oak trim piece right there. So we're doing the same thing. We're taking that piece, we're going to clamp it. And the line that I got from right there is, like I said, I went up to the cabinet, I put the side up there, and then I drew a line where the cabinet edge touches the plywood basically. So that way when the door shuts, there'll be a piece of oak there to fill in that gap, okay, which I'm going to show you right now. So you see now it's there. You have your bottom piece, you have your top piece, and then you have your vertical piece of oak. So that way it covers that gap going back behind there, and it gives it that nice detail. You see that? That's what we want. And that way it gives you a real clean edge. Boom. Okay, so then we're going to basically mimic this side and do it on the other side, which is what we did. And the nails that we're using are 15 gauge nails, and we're using like a 1¼ inch nail that goes through that plywood and goes through the oak, and that way it doesn't come out through the face of the oak. You want to make sure that you don't use big nails, because then they'll go all the way through your material. But right now that we're using to install them on the wall, we're using actually 2-inch 15 gauge nails. And we locked it into the back framing of that cabinets, and then we're also countersinking, piloting countersinking from the face frame of the cabinet into the oak trim. Now you can go from the inside of the hood cabinet and drill into the face frame of the cabinets on the right or left side, or you can go from the cabinets into the oak trim, which is what I'm doing, because it allows me to really know where my screws are going to go and if it's going to lock in really good. You can do it from the back side, just got to measure correctly and everything will line up just fine, and then your screws will be hidden. But just be careful, you want to make sure countersink and pilot, you don't want to split that face frame on that cabinet, okay, because then you'll have to replace the cabinet face frame. Alright, so now I'm measuring for my bottom piece, and see, I got my bottom piece, I cut it, it's going to actually sit up on that lip. Because those pieces of oak are down 3/4 inch, now it's going to basically go flush with the sides, you see that, and then it's going to go sit on top of that lip. The lip that I'm talking about is the lip against the wall, and that's the backsplash lip. And I had my towel guys leave it at that reveal just so I can build this hood at this height. Alright, speaking of heights, as far as heights goes, you want to check with the manufacturer of the hood and the stove, okay? If you have a gas range or an electric range, your height differences to burning material from the bottom of the stove, or I'm sorry, from the top of the stove to the bottom of wood burning material, there's certain heights you have to be, minimum heights, okay? So make sure you follow those guidelines. I always, even if I have an electric stove, I like to use the minimum guidelines for gas and try to bring it up to gas heights. That way, no matter what in the future, if there's a gas stove that's get put in there, it's still going to work just as fine as it would for an electric range. So now I'm screwing everything in. After I got that plywood in, I nailed it in, and then I went back through and used some screws, and I screwed up into basically the sides of the plywood on the right and left side. And then right here I'm countersinking in again from my face frame of the cabinets on the right side, and I'm screwing into the oak trim, and I'm using a countersink and a pilot so that way none of the wood splits and it's a really good locked in connection. Alright, and as well, the two right sides, the plywood, the right and the left side, I'm sorry, of the plywood, the two sides, I screwed those into the back framing of the cabinet as well. Alright, so now we're going to get ready to start putting on our face molding, right? And that's going to be our face molding that's going to actually help hold in the door too. Okay, so this molding, and we're just doing all square butt joint edges. We're not doing any mitering on the edges, because I've noticed if you do butt joint, it really comes out a lot better as far as the miter joint, because they're you know, the cabinets figuring out exactly for the miter, it gets a little tricky. But you can do that if you want. You can do miter joints, but this is all shaker style cabinets, and everything's a butt joint, so it's sort of the style and the design. So butt joint looks great for this type of build. But like I say, you can go ahead and when you install those two, the right and the left side on those oak trim, you can just give it a miter cut, and then your outer piece will be a miter cut. But the thing is the top piece, when you do a miter cut, when you put the magnets and that top piece is a separate piece, the miter cuts sometimes won't really connect that well and be that good of a connection with the magnets, which is how we're going to connect this at the top. So with the butt joint, it really, if it's just a 1/16 of an eighth gap from the butt joint on the edges, you can't really tell the difference. It still looks really clean. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm actually, when I cut that plywood, I should have cut that plywood 3/4 inches coming out past the right and the left side, and then that way when I install my face trim, it comes out flush with my left side, but that plywood, I actually cut it the same size as the plywood on the right and the left side. I forgot to compensate about the reveal on the front face of it, so I just added a 3/4 inch ripper piece to that bottom plywood. So when you cut that bottom plywood, just make sure it comes out 3/4 inches, the same size, come out flush with the oak on the right and the left side. All right, now we're putting that face frame in. We're using 15 gauge nails because that oak is a really hard wood, and if you use like a 16 gauge or an 18 gauge, the nail might not even shoot through the wood. You'll have to countersink first and then hand drive some nails in, which is fine as well, but the 15 gauge nail gun really drives the nail in solid. Okay, and we're going all the way through that oak, and then we're getting into that plywood, that 3/4 inch ripper, and then we're going in past that all the way to the actual 3/4 inch piece of plywood that's on that bottom piece, which is the horizontal piece on the bottom of the cabinet. All right, so now I'm measuring for my actual door. So what I'm going to do is measure from the inside of the pieces of oak, and then I'm going to have my door, okay? And then there it is. See, I just used that piece of plywood, and then I just measured from the inside of my oak trim, and there's my piece, okay? And as far as that oak door, that piece of plywood trim that is on the face, you want to make sure it's just about a 1/4 inch bigger than from the top of that lip to from that oak to the ceiling. And you'll see, you have time to adjust it, but you want to make sure you dry fit everything, keep constantly trying to fit it, and make sure if you have to trim it down, you trim it down when you need to. You don't want to trim too much. Okay, you can always take away more wood, but you can't really grow the wood back on. Especially in certain situations, you can fix things like that, but most of the time, you just want to cut off some and then cut off a little more and then cut off a little more until it's just going to fit perfectly, be a nice snug fit. So now I'm measuring where my oak piece is going to go, and then I'm going to go ahead and glue it, set it on, clamp it, flip it over, and nail it from the other side. Okay, and that's basically what I'm doing here. And then remember, you see how the edges are 3/4 inch overhang on each side? That's why we have the other oak trim pieces that were 3/4 inch overhang, so they're going to butt right up to that edge. And that's the idea on this. All right. Now, I hope you all like these videos, and if so, you like to subscribe. That'd be cool. And also remember to give us a thumbs up on these videos. So the more likes we have, the more YouTube's algorithm will help share these videos with everybody. And I do a lot of editing and a lot of this stuff after hours, and and I'm just trying to show everybody how to do these kinds of builds because they're sort of custom things I get requested to do, and I just want to shoot a video to do it. And it takes a lot of work for me to set up, the camera, do all the filming, and then go through and edit everything, and, do the audio and do all this just so you all have an idea of basically what's going on as far as how to build this. And please, for supporting our channel, it'd be really cool if you just give us a thumbs up and a like and share us with your social media, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, so like I said, we glued everything on the face and then we flipped it over, and then now we're going to nail it. So what I'm showing right here is I'm taking a piece of the 3/4 inch plywood, and then I'm taking a piece of the oak. It's sort of out of shot there, but this one's going to be a little bit better in shot. So, and then I shoot a nail through, and I make sure that it's not, the reveal of the nail isn't going to go all the way through. And this is how you check. So if you get a 1 1/4 inch nail and you shoot it through and you see it doesn't come through, that's what you want. You don't want your nail to shoot all the way through and then come out the back side. Or in this case, it would be the face side, and that would ruin the whole piece. Okay, so you want to make sure the nails you're using, and this is a good way to test it. You just get a piece of scrap 3/4 plywood that you're using, a piece of the oak that you're using, nail it together, and say, oh, okay, those nails don't penetrate all the way through. And if for some reason they were, and it's the only size nail you have, you can also turn the compressor down a little bit, and it might not shoot it all the way through the nail, and it won't come out that face. Okay, but this is I'm just showing you all just how to just demonstrating on how to check to see if your nail, when shooting your nail through the two materials, won't come all the way through to the other side. It's very important that you check those things. And of course, you have 3/4 and you have 3/4, and you think to yourself, okay, well, it's 1 1/2 inch of material, if you're using 1 1/4 nail, sometimes they still can shoot through to the face. So it's good still to check everything like that. All right, so now that we have the face all on and ready to go, we're going to drop it in and see how it fits. And see how it drops down, and then there's a gap. That's good. That's what we want, because we're gonna install our face trim pieces, our little moldings that are gonna go on the face, and that's actually gonna keep it from dropping down. But we want it to drop down just a hair, so that way we can have room to pull it away from the ceiling. And then we want it to drop down and then drop in, drop up. And at the very end of the video, I'll do an explanation, and I show you guys how it's dropping in and dropping out. All right, so now we're gonna attach our angles, our pieces of angle, and then we're gonna attach our magnets to the door, and we're gonna make sure that all works. And once we get all that done, we're gonna start doing our trim pieces, or maybe we're gonna start doing our trim pieces first, and then we're gonna attach the magnet. It's been a minute. It's been maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks since I did this build, and now I'm doing the audio. So sometimes when I'm doing these builds and I come back and do the audio later, I get the little time frames mixed up a little bit here and there, because like I say, it has been 2 weeks. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking the trim pieces, and I'm actually going to just dry fit them up there and make sure they're going to look good, because I'm going to have 2 pieces of trim that are going to be attached to the right and the left side of the plywood, and those are going to be attached to those sides, and then there's going to be the face trim that's going to be attached to the actual door. Okay, and then the ones that are attached to the door are going to magnetize and going to go up there and lock, and I want it to all lock in like it's all nailed together, and like it's not, you know, not connected. So right now I'm taking the trim piece. It comes out a little bit past my reveal. So what I'm doing is I'm marking a line, and then I'm going to go ahead and go back and rip those down. I'm going to put my cut edge up against that oak so you don't see it. All right, so I'm going to do that for both sides. I'm going to trim them, and then I'm going to fit them in there. And if the cabinet came out a little bit further, another inch, then you wouldn't even have to trim those pieces. But I wanted to keep the reveal from coming out too far from the existing cabinets. I didn't want them to come out too far. So that being said, we're just going to have to trim these 2 pieces down just about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to show you right there. You see that 1/4 inch rip? We're just going to be taking that off. We're going to use a table saw, and we're going to rip those 2 little edges off, and then we're going to put that cut edge against the oak, and we're going to nail it on the right and the left side. Okay, so we just did that. We got those cut with the table saw, the finished blade on the table saw. It's a real clean cut, and you can see the oak trim pieces. You see how they go on there? And then we're gluing it, and then we're going to tack it in. Now the nails we're using for this one, this is an 18 gauge, and we're only using a 3/4 inch nail. Okay, because we're shooting in about 1/4 inch. The wood is about 1/4 inch thick, and then it's going to that 3/4 inch plywood. So you can see now I'm dry fitting everything. Like I say, you constantly want to be checking with your door, dry fitting everything, making sure everything's lining up and fitting properly. All right. Oh yeah, we're liking this. It's coming out nice. So you can see now what we're going to go through is we're going to cut all of the trim pieces that are going to be our trim detail that's on the face of the door. Excuse me. And we're going to go ahead and go through and cut them all. And then we're going to be installing them on the face side of the door. Okay. Now, if you all aren't familiar with our channel, we're a construction channel, and we do custom stuff. We do general remodels. We do additions. We do huge houses, small houses, tiny houses, you name it. We do it. We do wood carving. We do custom cool builds. We do all sorts of stuff on this channel. So if you like this channel, remember, subscribe and like. All right, now we're going to be attaching the magnets. Okay, and these magnets I just get from Home Depot, and you can probably order them online or whatever if you don't have access to a Home Depot. And then now what I'm doing is I attach them to the angle, okay, the piece of the angle, and that's just a building angle clip. You can find that over in your Simpson section over at your local hardware store. And then I attach the magnet to the angle, and then I bring it up and I make sure that the magnet is flush with that plywood on the side, because my face plywood is going to be, that magnet's going to be screwed to the back side of that plywood. That's our face plywood, and then it has to lock to that metal angle there, that clip. So that being said, we got to make sure that magnet is flush. So you want to make sure that angle is back set just a little bit, basically the thickness of the magnet. And then once you have that, see how I marked it, and then I marked the holes. I'm going to go ahead and pilot the holes, and then I'm going to throw in a couple screws. And what I like to do is throw in like 2 screws, boom, on each side, and then I take the magnet, and then I'll set the magnet on the face door on my panel, and then I'll lock it all together and make sure it works good. If I have to adjust that clip, bring it out of face or whatever, then I do that and use that the two other screws, because there's 4 holes on that clip, to bring it out to my new reveal if I have to. And then it's like 2 fresh holes for those screws, and then I go back and just repilot on the other holes and just install the screws in the other areas of the clip. That way it gives myself a little bit of a chance for adjustment if I need it, with some nice fresh holes. Okay, hope that makes sense. But anyways, just little things when you're building these kinds of things, they help if you just think of it like that. You know, it has 4 holes, you're just going to put 2 screws in, and then once you check everything looks good, then you can go through and put all the rest of the screws in and make sure it's all good. All right, so once we get these angle up, we're going to start throwing the magnets on the doors. I just want to do a quick little visual and show you again how it looks. So boom, throwing the clip up. And what I'm using like number 10 pan head screws that are 1 inch. All right, so there's number 10 pan head screws, 1 inch. Number 10, 1 inch pan head screws. And I like to use the pan head screws because they'll lock in, and then that pan head will really lock into on that steel clip really well, and it gives a really nice connection. Okay, so now that we got that done, we're just testing everything. Okay, everything looks good. We're going to take those 2 magnets now, and we're going to attach it to basically our door, our access door right now. Oh yeah, we're getting excited because this project's, it's coming to the end right here. And this is custom stuff. When you start building these things, you have a sort of an idea of how you're going to build it when you start, and then you just got to sort of get into it and start going, and it's going to evolve and sort of, turn into its own custom, piece, of built-in cabinet that's going to be there. So you want to make sure it's all comes out the way it's supposed to come out, as far as you're building it. Even though they're all custom, sometimes you got to do something a little different in another area or at another house than you would at one house. So that being said, you just got to make sure you double check all your measurements, check everything, dry fit everything, make sure everything's going to work out the way you want it to work out. So you see that was a number 10 pan head screw, 1 inch. We're going to lock that right down to the center. Then we're going to take that and we're going to dry fit it. And bam, oh yeah. And those magnets, they lock in really strong. So when you try to remove it, it almost feels like it's connected, like screwed together or nailed together, like you can't even remove them. So now I'm going to be taking my face trim molding, then I'm going to attach them right there where I want them, because I can really see the reveal of what I'm working with. So I just put a glue on the left side of that trim, and I put that up to my face board, and I nail it only on that side, so it's not nailed to the trim on the right side or the left side, but it's just nailed to the face board. So that way when I remove them, they're not attached, but it looks like they are once it's all stationary and you put the board back up. So you see, when you go back, when you look at it, see, it looks like all that wood is together. It's just like a corner piece of angle, but it's not. That face piece of wood is only attached to that 3/4 inch plywood on the face, and then you got your moldings attached to the sides. See that? And then I leave a little bit of a gap. See how I leave that 1/16 of an inch gap? That way you can pull the panel down and bring it away from the ceiling about 1/8, and then you can lean it towards you and pull it off. Oh yeah. See that? You push it down, and then you can pull. You don't want to pull on those 2 little pieces of wood. You want to try to hold on to the oak and the wood when you're pulling it off, so that way it all stays solid. But once everything's glued together, it doesn't come apart. All right, so now we're about to start throwing in our face. You can leave it just like that if you want, to be honest. But you can do whatever. You can add, a cool herringbone, kind of trim molding on there. You can do a horizontal wood paneling on there. You can do some vintage paneling. You can do a cool sign, like a cool metal sign on there, sheet metal sign or something. You can do all sorts of cool things with this design. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be throwing up just some more of that trim molding just along the face. And we're just going to, have about a 4-inch gap, 5-inch gap in between each trim molding, and then give it a real clean look. And then we're just going to clear coat all of the natural wood. And then we're going to go back through and just give another little coat on that white and just paint it the same white as basically all the trim of the house is. Okay, so now I'm taking my trim molding and I'm nailing it and I'm bringing it up to the top of the oak, so it's a tight connection to the top of the oak. But remember, you leave a 16th inch gap on that bottom, right? We like to use glue and nail it together. Remember, we're using the 18 gauge nails for this finish work right here, and then we're using 3/4 inch nails. All right, but if you use the glue and the nails, it's going to stick together and lock together pretty well. All right, so there it is. Boom, we got it all ready to go. Now it's just basically ready to finish off, and we're almost there. So now we're going to be installing the hood. Okay, what I like to do is pull out the manual, verify everything is a standard installation procedure, which is pretty common once you install a few of these. I like to plug them in, make sure everything's working properly, the motor's working, everything is working good, all the electronics in the unit is working good. Once I do that, then I'm ready to install it. Now what we're going to be doing is measuring out where we're going to install our ducting and cut out our ducting. So now we're going to be drilling out our hole for our ducting, so we can have our 7-inch ducting from the bottom of that, from the top of that hood. That's going to go through the bottom of our hood box cabinet, and then it's going to attach to our ducting. So what I like to do is I like to square out my opening, basically measure it out square, and then I like to take in a piece of ducting that's just a 90, and then I'll trace my circle, and then I'll cut about a 1/4 inch outside of my circle. Okay, I use the paddle bit to give me a couple holes, and you don't want to punch all through. If you punch all the way through really quick, it's gonna rip the veneer of the plywood on the top. So you just want to go through a little bit, and right before you go all the way through to the top, you slow down, so that way you don't punch through and rip that veneer on the top of the plywood. Okay, if you feel a little hole, you can also do a little bit from the top, and then you can drill through from the bottom and from the top. And then that way it doesn't, like I say, ruin the veneer of the plywood. I'm using a jigsaw here. You can use a sawzall. You can use a multi-purpose tool, whatever. You can just cut a square hole if you want to keep it nice and easy. And also, we're cutting out the hole for the service cord, okay? So we had an appliance cord attached to the hood, and that way it just gets plugged in to the outlet that's up on the wall inside of the hood box. And right now we're just going to measure, and we're going to use a 1.5 inch drill bit, or paddle bit, excuse me, with our drill. And then that way the service cord can just come through. But you see how I did part of it from the bottom and then the rest from the top? That way it doesn't punch a hole all the way through and ruin that veneer on that plywood on the top. So now we got everything's lining up really good. What came with this hood was they're basically screws with washers and with wing nuts. I don't like to use the wing nuts, and I'll explain that here in a minute, but and the washers you can't really use because of the plywood on the right and left side. So I like to use number 10 panhead screws, and you can use 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch, but I'm going to explain that here in a second.
Real quick, when doing this, if you see, this is what comes with the hood. It comes with the washer, it comes with the little wing nut. Some of them just come with a nut, and then it comes with your bolt right there, right? So that goes through, and then you lock it all together. But the thing is, this build, my plywood, my structural plywood right here, the washer hits. So we really couldn't use this form of, mounting method. We couldn't install it with these, technically. So basically we use these pan heads right here, 3-inch pan heads, and we also use these number 10 by 2-inch pan heads. And then we threw 2 of these in the back, and it goes up into the plywood. And then we threw 2 of these in the front, and that goes up in the plywood. And then we threw 2 more in the center. And this thing is locked in really strong. It's even stronger than probably it would have been with the wing nuts. Because I don't trust those wing nuts. With the vibration of the fan and the motor going, the wing nuts can back out, completely back away, and sometimes you get a loose connection. So I like to use these kind of, number 10 pan heads anyways.
And there you have it. So that's basically why we like to use the number 10 screws. All right, so now we're attaching our ducting. Our ducting is pretty self-explanatory. I like to use, it's a little bit offset. So, and you got to use UL rated. You always want to use UL rated. That foil tape should have a rating on it saying it's UL rated tape. That means that it's accepted. And you should be using that product that's basically has a UL rating on it. It's been approved. All right, so now we're just attaching. We got one straight edge piece of ducting, and then we got a little 90 that just jogs over and attaches to our bottom lip. And then we also have some clamps on the top and the bottom as well. So now that's all duct and taped in, we're basically ready to go. There it is. The hood is basically finished off. Just gonna clean it up, but real quick, I'm gonna let you know how we take it off and on.
So it's attached by magnets, and then it's sitting on the lip. So to remove it, you just push this down a little bit, and then you just pull it towards you. The magnets are really strong magnets, so they attach really well. And you can see the magnets back there. And you see how it sits on that lip right there. And then you just go up, set it in like that. And it locks right in. And then you can push it back up. And the magnets are really strong. It's going to hold it in place.
All right, we're all finished off. We used a clear coat semi-gloss, a spar urethane to clear coat all of the raw wood. And we also used a semi-gloss paint to paint the inside panels to match the trim on the rest of the house. If you like this video and you like this content, remember to subscribe and like if you haven't. If you are a subscriber, thank you for supporting us, and rock on. We appreciate you. You're part of the Kono Pro family, and you always will be. Hit us up if you have questions. And everyone else, remember to subscribe. Kono Pro out.